You're listening to the Fantasy Football Podcast with Charles Barr and John Chapman.
Here we go with episode 4 of Fantasy Football, with Charles Barr, more than a casual fan, and John Chapman, brainchild, fantasy football extraordinaire.
What is up? Thanks for joining us. I'm excited to talk some more football, man.
This week we have tight ends lined up. In our previous 3 podcasts have been about running backs, wide receivers, and QBs. And if you haven't heard those yet, go get a listen and go get the advantage in your fantasy football league.
What we do, we're trying to bring home some championships. That's the goal of this whole ordeal.
Exactly. And for any new listeners, we have a tiered-based approach, and that's where we're going to start today. John, let's start right off the bat and take us through your top 12 guys.
So I have the top 12 tight ends broken up into 3 separate tiers. I have my elite guys at the top, and if you get these guys, they're game changers. And we'll talk a little bit later about when to get them. Just because they're elite doesn't mean you want to go grab them in round 1. You're going to see some people do that, and that's okay. But you don't want to be one of those people. But my top 4 guys, these are head and shoulders above everybody else. Starting off with number 1, which is we're going to talk about later, is Travis Kelce. I absolutely love Travis Kelce because he has a high ceiling and he has a high floor, which that gives him the jump over number 2, and that's Gronk. I mean, Gronk is exceptional, and if Gronk is healthy, he'd be number 1. The problem is he's only played every game in the season twice in a 7-year career. Wow. Now, whenever he did that, he would have been a wide receiver, the wide receiver 1. 17 touchdowns, 1,300 yards, just absolute beast. But the problem is he's missed a whole lot of games. Just understand that when you miss that many games, that's a huge risk. And if you draft him in the first or second round and he doesn't play, very similar to last year, then you're in trouble. So Gronk has missed 18 games the past 4 years. That's a whole fantasy season. It's over a fantasy season. Rounding out the elite guys, I got Greg Olson at 3 and Jordan Reed at 4. So before I go to the next tier, Charles, what do you think about those 4 guys?
Yeah, I've always had Greg Olson, guy I have loved to lean on because he's just so consistent. Like, I don't know, I could always rely on him for like a touchdown a week, but I'm starting to wonder about him. Like, have we worn out Greg Olson? Is there somebody else who's going to take over for him?
Right. And so the thing with Greg Olson, he's the first tight end in NFL history to have 3,000-yard seasons in a row.
Wow.
Nobody's ever done that before. Not Gonzalez, not Gates, which is just unreal. And it just shows you how consistent he is. And so he's definitely got the lowest risk of this elite class, but he also has the lowest ceiling. He's not going to finish higher than he did. He was the number 2 last year, but not by a lot. And so I don't think that he's going to be the guy that's going to be the tight end 1, but he's going to be in the top 6 for sure. What do you think about Jordan Reed, man?
Yeah, that's what I was going to go to next. He's a guy who I fear to draft, actually. He disappeared in games. I'm not necessarily how that factored out in his fantasy production, but being an Eagles fan, I've watched him play the Eagles. I kind of keep track of the Redskins to see what they're doing, and that watching their games, sometimes he just fades away.
It's interesting the way he plays. He's almost missed as many games as Gronk. He's missed 17 in the last 4 years.
Wow.
His problem is concussion. So he has 6 known concussions. If you've ever played football, you realize he probably has more than that. And he's probably 1 concussion away from being done. You don't wish that on anybody, but that's a major concern there. Now, the good thing about him is, let's say you do draft Jordan Reed, you have to draft Vernon Davis. Just the very last round of the draft, you can pick him up. His ADP, his average draft position, is number 292 right now. So, I mean, he's a waiver wire pickup, but just do me a favor and do yourself a favor. If you do draft Jordan Reed, that's fine. Just give yourself that very last roster spot for Vernon Davis because when he came in, he put up great numbers. So just understand that offense does go through him, and he will be productive as long as he's healthy. It's just him and Gronk, you're biting your nails because who knows if this is their last game. They just missed too much.
So I'm going to actually dive into, we'll take a break away from the tier, that elite section. I have an attack on Titans right now. Attack on Titan.
Attack on the Titans.
Yeah. every year for the past 5 years, there's been a steady decline. I went back and did a little bit of research in tight ends, but last year was especially low. The highest score was Travis Kelce at 138 for standard scoring.
Right, so this is non-PPR, so standard.
Yep, for standard, so 2016. Then you go to 2015, you have Rob Gronkowski scoring 183. Travis Kelce, if he was in that same year, he would have been 6th or 7th.
Yeah, that was a crazy year for tight ends.
Yeah.
And it's dropped off since then. Everybody thought it was going to keep going, and it just hasn't shown.
But there was some consistency between 2013, 14, and 15. Really, before that, it kind of does drop off, and it's in the same area. But my question to you is, should I be scared of drafting tight ends as high? Because you remember, just a few short years ago, you had people taking Rob Gronkowski in the first round.
So I've got two different ways to answer this question. One, I'm going to go in about just draft and roster construction, and then two, kind of the NFL and where that's going. So number one is, I do not advise taking tight ends early. They are the least valuable fantasy player position. Kickers and defenses, I don't really count too much, but you don't want to focus on a tight end. And the main reason is why. Some teams have two quality tight ends. You have teams like the Chargers, the Patriots, the Redskins we just talked about. They have two fantasy viable tight ends. And of each team, let's say you have a 12-team league, you can only start one tight end. Now, I understand that you can start a flex tight end in most leagues, but you don't want to do that because they're not putting up the numbers that most wide receivers are. So I totally believe in waiting on tight end unless somebody just extreme falls to you. And so just last year alone, last year I'm in several leagues, so keep that in mind. But I picked up Dennis Pitta, who finished as a top 5, Rudolph from the Vikings, top 5, Cameron Brate, top 10, and Doyle, he didn't put together the solid season, but he was a number 12 tight end last year, so he was still a tight end 1. I picked up all of those guys. Those are all top 12 finishing guys off the waiver wire in all my separate leagues, not the same league.
Yeah.
But that's going to be available because what happens is not everybody's going to keep two tight ends. So if you draft Kelce, you're just taking one tight end. So you have about half of the 12 teams will select two tight ends. So that means 18 tight ends will be rostered on all fantasy squad. That means there are so many guys that are available on the waiver wire.
Right.
And so you do not need to go after tight ends early. Okay, that's very, very important. Now, second point, and this is more NFL focused. What happened with the Patriots after Gronk had that crazy year, and it started way back with Aaron Hernandez and Gronk, whenever they both came out and dominated. The NFL is a copycat league, so everybody's like, oh, man, everybody go get these athletic freak tight ends. And, well, the NFL responded. And so now all the safeties are these uber athletes that used to be running backs that are designed, first and foremost, to stop guys like Gronk and like Kelce. And so the NFL has caught up a little bit. And so there's so many hybrid safeties like Honey Badger or Deon Buchanan, stuff like that. And so that's what's changed. Is it started to catch up.
I have a trivia question for you. Ready?
Oh, I'm excited.
Give me the tight end with the most targets from last year.
Oh, I know this answer. I want to say Pitta off the top of my head. I'd say Pitta or Olson.
You're really close. You just named the number 2 and the number 3 guy, but not the number 1.
Who's number 1?
You don't want to take another crack?
I think it's somewhere off the wall. Like, I'd say Rudolph, maybe?
Nailed it.
Boom. So I got the top 3?
Nailed it. You got the top 3. I'm going to challenge you further. Here we go.
Okay, let's go.
In 2015, who led the league in targets for tight end?
2013, I'd say Delaney Walker.
Sorry, 2015, but you're also right. It was Delaney Walker.
Yeah, that dude crushed it that year because I remember a lot of people, one, I'm a huge Delaney Walker guy. He used to play for the Niners. We should have never let him go. And so every single time he dominates, I just like cry a little bit on the inside. That's okay. We got Vance McDonald. He's great. Psych. Yeah. We have tight ends performing all over the NFL as a 49ers fan, just not for our team.
Hey, you loved the Vance McDonald pick, by the way. He was a Jim Harbaugh pick, I believe.
Well, Trent Baalke was in charge of the draft. He was out of Rice second round, but no, he needs to be cut. They tried to trade him in the draft. He needs to be gone. He needs to be gone. Sleeper pick if you're in Dynasty, get George Kittle, tight end out of Iowa for the 49ers. The kid is going to produce in that system. Might not be this year, so I don't recommend him for best ball or redraft, but Dynasty, oh, you best believe I'm getting that boy in every Dynasty league. And you can get him in the 5th or 6th round of your Dynasty rookie draft, so he's almost free.
That's awesome. I want to just ask a quick question about an elite guy, and then we need to move to the next tier. So the loss of Macklin, how many more targets and how many more touchdowns, or what do you think the impact is for Kelce?
Oh, man. Well, one, it helps Kelce big time, and it shows you they're going to put that entire offense through Kelce, which is so great. I mean, Alex Smith can throw it 15 yards. Again, talking about former 49ers. And so it's all going to be short passes, screen passes out to Tyreek Hill. And, they got a couple rookies out there that they're trying their hardest to see if they're going to pan out. But this is going to be a run-heavy offense, screen to the receivers. Kelce's going to be the deep game, and he's going to get targets out the wazoo. I think his target share is going to go up. He had a lot last year, finished with over 150. He had 115 targets last year, but I think that's going to go up. And he should stay healthy. He's played 3 straight years without missing a game, and so that's why I have him number 1. Is he's super safe and he's a beast.
And if I know my Andy Reid like I think I know my Andy Reid, I think
I feel you.
They're in for a bad year because Andy Reid likes to kind of just dominate, like just that almost Super Bowl kind of guy that going to get to the playoffs for sure, going to draft decent, going to get some steals. He's actually very good about drafting deep. But
he had 12 straight wins last year.
Yeah,
that's unreal.
It is impressive, but I don't think that they added very much. I know you love Kareem Hunt, but they lost Macklin. They didn't really give any other support to Alex Smith. I'm not loving them. Let's move on.
Moving on.
Tier 2, take us through it.
All right, so Tier 2, these are my 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. Guy we just mentioned, Delanie Walker at number 5. I love Delanie Walker. I don't know if he's going to be able to continue with what they're doing. They added, 2 stud wide receivers and Corey Davis in the draft, Eric Decker. He's going to take that slot role. And so there's just going to be a diminished role there. Now, number 6, this is going to be kind of the big shocker for everybody, and that's Eric Ebron. I love me some Eric Ebron. I really do believe this guy is going to be putting up crazy numbers. He's super young. He drops a lot of balls, but I think that offense, I think they're going to try to use him like crazy. 7, Tyler Eifert, who I absolutely adore, but he just can't stay healthy. These are the games that he has played in his career. First year, 15 games. Next year, 1. Next year, 13 games. Next year, 8. So it seems like every odd year he balls out. And guess what? It's 2017. So he's scheduled based off that. I don't know how much stock you want to put in that, but it's just kind of the way it works out. But he's averaged almost a touchdown a game. And that offense is set up for, they got their franchise player in AJ. They got their possession guy, Tyler Boyd. They got their speed deep guy, John Ross now. But whenever it's in the red zone, that ball's going to Tyler Eifert. So he's going to be huge on touchdowns, best ball leagues, target that guy. And then the last one that I got is your boy, Zach Ertz.
Ugh. It's tough, man. Zach Ertz has been a guy who you want to love, but I got to be honest, as an Eagles fan, he disappears. He goes away in big moments, and you know who steps up? A guy who doesn't get enough credit, and Brent Selleck. He comes out, he balls out, he takes hard hits over the middle, and it kind of does what Zach Ertz doesn't. And then there's a third guy I'm going to throw in there who I was really surprised to see that we kept in Trey Burton. He is somebody who not a lot of people know, but he is a baller.
So I get that. And football-wise, I'm a huge Selleck fan. The problem is Zach Ertz finished as tight end number 6 last year, and he missed 2 games. It seems like every year he's been in the league, he starts super slow. And so if you are a person that waits on tight end and you really don't like the way things shake out after your draft, wait till week 2 or 3 and try to trade for Zach Ertz, because he has 2 to 3 weeks where he's just terrible, and he lights it up at the end of the year every single year. He had 30 targets in weeks 15 and 16 last year. That's just in 2 weeks. That's a trip, man. So if Wentz keeps looking his way, he's got major upside. And now there's lots of receiving help there with Alshon and Torrey Smith. So I don't know. His ADP is 109, his average draft position. And so he's going as the tight end 11 off the board. I think he's great value there. I really do.
Yeah, it's tough. So did you get through the end of the ranking? You went.
No, so that was the end of that tier. Let me just run through. I'm not going to go in depth on all these guys, but my last tight end one. So whenever I say tight end ones, most leagues have 12 teams. So the top 12 tight ends in my rankings. Number 9, I have Hunter Henry, major touchdown upside. 10, Kyle Rudolph. As long as Sam Bradford's there, he can't throw it far. So he'll keep throwing to the tight end. Number 11, Jimmy Graham, which I'm probably too low on. He finished number 3 last year. I just hate that offense. And number 12 is Jack Doyle. As long as Andrew Luck is healthy, whoever his tight end is will produce. Even weird, common named white people that probably he's just so awesome. I love Jack. He just doesn't look like a football player, but man, he just works his tail end off. So he's my number 12 guy.
What number did Martellus Bennett finish at? I don't think I heard it.
13. I got him at 13.
Okay.
He definitely could bump up. I love Marty B. You look at what he did last year. He finished as the number 10 tight end, and he was the second tight end on his team. He had 700 yards, 7 touchdowns. Now, one thing that's interesting about Bennett, he outscored Gronk in 5 of the 8 games that they both played in. And so the guy can play. Everybody keeps letting him go because he's just crazy. He's absolutely crazy on and off the field and whatever else, but he does.
So we have our very first question from a listener. Happens to be my brother.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it's kind of cute. Richard wants to know what you think the effect that Bennett is going to have on the Packers offense. It seems like they haven't had game-changing tight end in quite a long time.
Jermichael Finley, man.
What's that?
You got to go all the way back to Jermichael Finley.
Right.
Oh, man, he could still be playing if he didn't have those crazy injuries. But I'll say this. So what the Packers have always done is they try to bring in these kind of second-tier knockoffs to elite tight end potential. You look at who they had last year, right? They threw out Jared Cook, who's been all over, and the athleticism's there and all that stuff. He just dropped a lot of touchdowns. And you could see the thing with Rodgers is you don't need to be a coach to figure out what's going on. If you watch the football game, Rodgers will sit there and stare at the ground after you drop a pass and shake his head side to side. You know he's not going back to you, and he doesn't. And so Martellus Bennett has the potential to be so great. But, and here's my concern, Martellus Bennett is known as being a pretty big a-hole in the NFL.
Yeah.
And so is Aaron Rodgers. And I love Aaron Rodgers, but he is a huge a-hole. And if they clash, that could be huge. I think that he could be top 6 for sure finish. But man, I don't know. Something about it just says stay away. Now, if I can get crazy value on him, then that's great.
Here's the deal. I'll say I disagree with that your ceiling is top 6 because, in all honesty, there is an alternate universe where he could be, dare I say, number 1 or 2. I mean,
it's possible. He's so
Aaron
many
Rodgers
tight ends.
Can have that kind of impact. They have a volume offense like that. You have guys like Devontae Adams who, in my opinion, isn't that special of a wide receiver, but because of the offense that he's in, his fantasy value is high. So I think Martellus Bennett is a very fantastic tight end athletically. Sometimes he drops the ball. Sometimes it looks like it's out of like laziness, though, or will. But put him in a position where he can succeed a little bit later on in his career. Maybe he's starting to put it together a little bit that my time's limited and I need to be productive.
And so if you look at his career, so he started 30 this year. Now, last year he had his second highest yards per reception, which is interesting. You know, how much of that's just New England? But he's never had over 6 touchdowns before last year. He had 900 yards once with Chicago. We'll see. He's going to have to play better than he has anywhere else. And he's been with a lot of teams, Dallas, the Giants, Chicago, New England. He's on his 5th team. There's a reason why people are letting him go.
I have another listener question. It's from my dad, so just family questions. Anybody else want to give a question who's not my family?
Yeah. Do you have to be a member of your family to ask a question?
When we get our first listener question that's not family, I'm going to be so excited. So We're going to talk about a tight end who I have a ton of respect for, who I hate and love. Actually, I love him. I don't hate him at all. He's got great character. He's produced for the Cowboys forever. And he's the ageless wonder, and the dude just signed like a 12-year extension. What the heck? Why do you give an extension to a guy who is so old and shouldn't be producing? But here's the question, John. What is the ageless wonder's fantasy impact? What does he have left in the tank?
He's got a lot, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
It doesn't make any sense. But if you look at what he did last year, he had 6 games over 10 points, which doesn't sound like much. But if you look at where you're getting him,
right,
he's so cheap. He's almost undrafted. Like, you can get him in the 14th, 15th, 16th round. And the main reason why is he's not exciting. Okay, so last year was his lowest ever in yards, but he had 673, and he only had 3 touchdowns. But, man, he just gets so many targets. I don't think that's going to change. And
me neither.
We've talked on this podcast earlier, a few episodes ago, that Cowboys aren't going to be doing as well as 13-3 like they did last year. That defense is going to need some major help, and they're going to be playing from behind, which they didn't have to do last year. They're going to have to throw more. So I believe in getting in on these Cowboys receivers and Dak with their value, because I think they will all exceed. Now, my ranking for Jason Witten, he's 17. So, I'm guessing about 18 tight ends will be rostered, and you can basically get Jason Witten for free. And here's what I would do. Again, if you get somebody like Gronk, okay, and you don't get to get Dwayne Allen, his backup there, get Jason Witten. Balance him with a super safe tight end that you can start whenever Gronk is out or injured. Tyler Eifert, pair him up with Jason Witten. That's just such a perfect pairing that will pay off. And again, it doesn't cost too much.
And he's got Dez, playmaker, out to the outside. He's got Cole Beasley, who seems to be on a forever crossing route, and he's really good at it. And then you've got Terrence Williams, who I believe is still there.
Yes. They signed him to an extension.
Of a number 2, but he's still providing that deep threat, big body. And then you've got to respect the run at all times with this offense. And it just seems like Jason Witten is that guy who, the middle linebacker ends up with the job to guard him. And he's going to beat these middle linebackers on a consistent basis because this guy can run a route still to this day. It's not the quickest route you've ever seen, but it is very effective. And you got to give him that. Okay. So moving on, Dennis Pitta is out. Who gets the job with the Ravens?
I don't think they know that yet. There's a lot of options there, but I don't think that anybody really knows. So let's just look at last year and kind of what happened. You got Crockett Gilmore there. He had 21% of the snaps. Then you had Darren Waller. He had 20% of snaps. He just got suspended. And then kind of the big name there is Max Williams, but he only played 54 snaps last year. I don't think he's even going to make the roster. The big name that I think is, and that's going to be Ben Watson, Bubba Watson, who didn't even play last year, but we remember what he did with the Saints. And for that tight end role, all they need is reliable hands that can catch 3rd and 4 passes from Joe Flacco, because they throw the ball more than anybody. That's all they do, because they're terribly coached, and Joe Flacco's not a great NFL quarterback. And so I think it's going to be Ben Watson. But I would put Gary Barnidge as kind of a dark horse. He's a free agent right now, cut by Browns. And
yep.
So I think if he goes there, or if a trade takes place, let's say they send Vance McDonald there, the 49ers. They were in talks during the draft. I think that'd be a great fit. But I still would not bump them up into my top 12. I'd probably put them at about 16, 17, 18 range. Maybe even lower than that.
Gary Barnidge 2 years ago was the number 2 scoring tight end with 9 touchdowns. I mean, the guy can play, but not a believer in that offense this year. And we're going to talk a little bit more about their division, not in this episode, but in a future one. Let's move on. Who has the higher ceiling this year, O.J. Howard or Evan Ingram?
Whew. So I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Definitely O.J. Howard has the higher ceiling. I'm not a big fan of the Evan Ingram pick. He's fine as a player. I just think that's a bad fit. But I would go with option C, and that's David Njoku, the other tight end that went in the first round to the Browns. I think that guy is going to be absolutely special. One, he has zero competition. Like we said, they cut Gary Barnidge, which I think was a mistake. It's funny. Gary Barnidge, as soon as David Njoku was drafted on draft night, he tweeted at David Njoku and said, "Hey man, so glad to have you in the tight ends room. Can't wait to work together." And then the next morning they cut Gary Barnidge. So it was just kind of like, oh man, he was being friendly. That sucks.
Right.
But OJ Howard, man, he's not stepping into an automatic role. Will he be a starter? Yes. But Cameron Brate's not going anywhere. He had 8 touchdowns last year. Like, that guy is still going to be a target of Jameis Winston. And then if you look at Evan Ingram, geez, man, probably the most crowded receiving core in the entire NFL. Odell Beckham's getting his no matter what. Then you got Brandon Marshall around the goal line. Then you've got Sterling Shepard, the rookie sensation last year. And then Evan Ingram. And my player comp for Evan Ingram was Brandon Marshall. They're going to be playing the same role. And so I really think that was a wasted draft pick. They could have done so much more. They needed a running back. I'm not a big believer in Paul Perkins. I do like Wayne Gallman there, though. I do think that he will get some playing time, especially in Dynasty. Go grab that guy. But I think Ingram was a terrible pick.
And 2, they should have got a tight end who could block, because that's the knock on Ingram, is that he can't block, and they already have an offensive line that can't block. So it's not like you can leave him out there and he's going to do a solid job to help chip on a guy.
So the problem with Ingram isn't so much that he cannot block, it's that he's never done it before. So you assume he can't. He's undersized. He's pretty small. He's about 240, and he was a wideout. He played split out almost 90% of his snaps at Ole Miss. And so you're going to tell that guy, okay, for the first time ever, I want you to put your hand on the ground. Oh, by the way, it's against NFL-style defensive ends. It's stupid. This was like if a kid played Madden was making the draft pick, I felt like. I just felt like it was, I don't know, maybe he'll be the next best thing, but you have so much young talent at that position. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so, because there's too many mouths to feed on that offense. It would be hard to see unless the Giants are scoring 45 points a game, which, hey, maybe it's possible, but not with Eli running that.
Not with Eli.
I'll say on a side note for this next question, this draft was the most surprising draft that I've ever seen, I think.
That was awesome.
Right? I mean, the first round, you didn't see anything coming. The Chiefs taking that QB out of Texas Tech. Even Ingram was a surprise. You're like, what? And then how far did O.J. Howard fall? And that kind of gets back to, did the Bucs really have, hey, we need to go get a tight end? Because Brate had such a good year, but O.J. Howard falls to them, and they're like, we can't pass up on a top 5-7 talent in the draft.
It didn't make any sense. He fell all the way to 19. And I absolutely love the pick. I think it's great. You've got to do whatever you can to keep your young quarterback moving in the right direction. And let's be honest, Jameis Winston has looked awful at times, and he's looked spectacular at times. And so anything you can do to make him feel better, man, you go for it. Now, I will say this. It seemed like all the tight ends fell. I had David Njoku higher, but O.J. Howard is – and so I think he'll pan out eventually, but Cameron Brate's still going to get some work there.
So I see that you have some number 2 tight ends that are ranked higher than number 1 tight ends.
You mean like number 2, like second string, like on their team?
Second string, sorry.
Okay.
And number 1 is Hunter Henry, and the other one is Dwayne Allen.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have Dwayne Allen ahead of a lot of people. And again, it's just because we keep seeing it. We saw what Patriots can do when they had Martellus Bennett, when they had Aaron Hernandez, and shoot, even Tim Wright. Like, if you go back in 2014, Tim Wright had 6 touchdowns in that. He didn't even play all the games, but they love to use 2 tight end sets, and they are a matchup-based team. So whenever they play against these small speed defenses, they're putting 2 tight ends out there, and they will use them. Brady will throw to whoever is open. So,
who was that other tight end, though? There was another tight end they used for a minute. He was like 6'7", and then I think the Jets went out and got him the next year.
Yeah, Ryan took him away. Gosh, what was his name? And everybody fell in love with the guy. I can't remember his name for the life of me. I think he's on the Saints right now.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, this bothers me. Somebody tweet at me and let me know how stupid I am for not remembering this name. But
it's all good. So I think this brings us to our first bet of this.
We betting? Are we betting?
We're betting. So here is the bet.
See, it's not fair. You get to look at my rankings and you get a cherry pick.
Yes.
But that's okay. They're my rankings, so I should take responsibility.
So here is the bet.
Great rankings come great responsibility.
And then you will set the terms. The bet is this. We're each going to choose a candidate, a second string tight end, and whoever's candidate outperforms the other, they win.
Okay,
so
this is PPR scoring, correct?
No, I'm going to go standard.
Oh, you wuss.
Wait, why?
Just so, like, my grandma plays standard.
Fine, PPR. Half point PPR.
Okay, half point PPR. Deal.
I'm going to take Dwayne Allen as the number 2. I know that seems easy, and it is easy, and that's why I'm taking it. So I think Dwayne Allen is going to outscore whoever you pick. Who's your pick?
Okay. So any second string tight end on an NFL team that will finish with more points in a half point PPR than Dwayne Allen?
Right, not CFL, but the NFL. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Not European leagues.
You've got Phillip Rivers in the Chargers, who probably throws to his tight end more than anybody in NFL history. You look at they've tied the record with Antonio Gates for most touchdowns by a tight end, and they're going to break that this year. But I tell you this, Hunter Henry, that dude's going to ball out. They've had members of the coaching staff come out and say Hunter Henry probably could have had 16 touchdowns this year, but we were trying our hardest to break the record with Antonio.
Wow.
And so if you look at what Hunter Henry did last year, and you mean to tell me that while he put up all those crazy numbers, they were purposely trying their hardest to throw it the other way? That doesn't even make sense.
Crazy.
Now, I just think that he's going to be able to put up some crazy numbers. I really, really do. He had 7 touchdowns last year, and they weren't even trying to get him the ball.
It's crazy. And if you look at Antonio Gates, he had 93 targets. They were giving him lots of looks.
That's going to go down, and it's going to swing the opposite way. We talked about Hunter Henry. I could go him for sure. That's probably who I'm going to go. I could go Cameron Brate because I think he'll beat him with touchdowns, but not.
You better play it safe.
I'm going Hunter Henry. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going Hunter Henry. I really think Hunter Henry is just going to light it up. And I like Dwayne Allen, and I've gotten him in a couple leagues already, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Check this out. So Antonio Gates had 93 targets. Hunter Henry had 53 targets. So, I mean, a vast
difference.
Yep.
But so if you look at snap counts, Hunter Henry only had 12 less snaps than Gates. So he truly is a number 2. But with only 53 targets, he put up 8 touchdowns. Whereas Gates had 93 targets, only put up 7. The all-time leader in touchdowns for tight ends, and he's doubling his numbers. Ooh. You mean to tell me if he doesn't get 70 targets, he ain't going to have 10 touchdowns?
Right, and here, to back up your point even further, Hunter Henry's end score for fantasy football in standard was 93. Antonio Gates was 94. So he did that with 40 less targets. So he's definitely going to go up, and if you kind of play with the math a little bit, that puts him as a top 5 tight end.
It's there.
Yeah.
You know, I don't – the people in Dynasty are, like, trading first-round picks for him and stuff. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think that he will produce. I really, really do.
All right, good sir. What is going to be the actual terms of this bet?
Okay, so we let's recap what bets we've already done or what we've betted on. We've bet an alcohol bet. We've bet a food bet. We've bet an embarrassing bet. Let's do a painful bet. Let's do something that is going to be just unbearable. And here's why I say this. My wife is currently going through the Gilmore Girls, which is just godforsaken, terrible television.
Yikes.
It's as bad as can be. It's just bad. So, how about this? The loser, whoever loses this bet, has to watch a full episode and give a typed page breakdown that you will read on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
So the winner gets to pick what show, whether that's Gilmore Girls, which is just stupid, but they're only like 20 minutes. I'd say something like The Bachelorette, or I don't know. Is it really?
Yeah, it's serious.
Yeah, I'll stay with it. Like maybe we should just do The Bachelorette. Like the loser has to watch like a Bachelorette episode and give us their film analysis critique of the
That would be awesome.
As long as I win, it's awesome. If I lose, then I hate this damn bet.
Oh, dude, so cool. All right, let's move into our last segment, and that's where we talk about NFL division. The NFL division we're going to be talking about is the AFC South. Some people see this as one of the weakest divisions in all of football. Your thoughts, sir?
So I'm not the biggest AFC South guy, but they have been bringing themselves up. I mean, they are just kind of like the poster child for young talent in the NFL. And so I'm going to start with fourth place, my bottom dwellers every single year, and that is the Jaguars. I do not think that they can win. I don't think they know how to win. I like their new coaching staff. I love that Tom Coughlin's there, but they have not had a winning record in a decade.
It's got to change sometime.
Not with Blake Bortles, it ain't. He's a fantasy quarterback, but he is not an NFL quarterback. He's terrible. We've already made a bet on this.
I like those Jags. I have them somewhere different.
Gosh, you're crazy.
Who do you got number 3?
Number 3, I got the Colts. They should be a Super Bowl caliber team, but they have a terrible defense, and their offensive line is still struggling. And so back-to-back 8-8 seasons, but Luck is one of the best. And so there's been reports out he's not even throwing yet, but I think this was kind of planned whenever he had his surgery on his arm that he would be out this length of time. He should be thrown by training camp. If he's not thrown by the second week of training camp, then I'd get worried, but he should be fine.
Number 2?
Number 2, I got the Titans. They're awesome, man. And I think they could hands down win this division, and they could do damage in the playoffs. That is the first or second best offensive line in the NFL. There's no holes on this roster. There was one glaring need, and that was at cornerback, and they drafted Adoree Jackson in the first round out of USC. Now, he's very raw cornerback. Is he going to be able to fill in right away? He'll be starter day one, but if that defense stays like it's been and Mariota stays healthy, oh my gosh, they're going to be unstoppable. So I could see them doing something very similar to what Dallas did last year. I would not be surprised.
So you have the Texans number 1?
I do. They've won it.
Wow.
3 years. They've won it 3 years in a row.
I know.
They're getting J.J. Watt back. He didn't play at all last year. They traded away Brock Osweiler, probably the biggest upgrade on their team. I do believe in Deshaun Watson. I think he'll be starting by week 6. And they don't need that defense. You don't need offense to win. They've gone 9-7 3 years in a row.
I'm going to tell you why I don't believe in the Texans.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's the offensive line. I don't – when Arian Foster was doing his work, hey, man, that was behind Brandon Brooks and a few other fellas and a few other tight ends who could block for real. So their run scheme was ridiculous. He was a very good running back, and then you had some outside help. I know you got DeAndre Hopkins there. I know you've got Will Fuller, and you've got some other tools there, and Lamar Miller. Just not a believer. So I'm going to go through my rankings real quick, and then we can debate this.
Okay.
In dead last, I have the Colts.
Oh, you got the Jags finishing ahead of the Colts?
Absolutely. Here's what's going to happen. Andrew Luck's going to get hurt in about week 3 or 4, like a David Carr, like a mini quarterback who has a bad offensive line and gets hit and hurt, and he can only do it for so long. I seriously love Andrew Luck, and I feel so bad for him that he's been treated like this. So I got them dead last, okay? They didn't really do anything special to their team. They went backwards.
Right.
In third place, I have the Texans. I think Deshaun Watson will end up the number 1 quarterback there, and I think he'll do a pretty good job. I just don't think that they have enough pieces to move up in that division because I do have the Jaguars making a jump. I know you disagree, but I think that Fournette was the recipe for success. You mentioned Tom Coughlin, and here's the deal with Tom Coughlin. When was he most successful? When he had a good running back. Brandon Jacobs, Tiki Barber. You're talking about this guy knows that for us to be successful, we have to have the run because nobody is going to respect play action or anything. And for whatever reason, Chris Ivory, he didn't look himself last year. TJ Yeldon still kind of finding himself, but Fournette is a beast, and he's going to put people on their backside. That's going to open up things for Hearns and for Julius Thomas and for Allen Robinson. And I agree with you. Blake Bortles is what keeps them away from being elite.
Awful, man.
Terrible. Do not sleep on this defense. Calais Campbell,
That was huge.
A second year with Miles Jack at just one position. Jalen Ramsey, future lockdown corner. They have spent money and time on this defense. Do not sleep on them. And
they put A.J. Bouye. They signed him from the Texans to man the other corner. So they have zero weaknesses on that defense. I agree.
Dante Fowler's really his first real full training camp, so we think, without injury. So I'm loving the Jags. I've been a believer in them. They let me down last year. I believe in the bounce back by Blake Bortles. Let's do it. And then at number 1, I've got the Titans. Like you said, not a lot of holes there. Eric Decker, Corey Davis, Delaney Walker, DeMarco, and everybody's not really talking enough about what Derrick Henry started to look like the last 3 games. He started to look like somebody who was going to surpass DeMarco. So we'll see how it goes.
It's good stuff, man. I like it. That's probably a division we disagree on most, but that's okay. I am way smarter than you, so it's cool.
Right. We always start off the podcast with Charles Barr, casual. Or I do. I just insult myself right away. All right, man. So this has been episode 4. Kudos to us. I think it's our best episode so far. I think we did a really good job this time.
Nice. I feel good about it too. If you want to reach out, we need those questions from people that are not Charles Barr's family.
Yes.
And the way that you get those questions in is on Twitter. You can reach out to us at JL_Chapman. That's JL_CHAPMAN. And we are on iTunes now. What's up? We're also broadcast live on YouTube. And you can look us up on Spreaker, SoundCloud. We're all out there. It's fantasy football with a question mark. So hit that subscribe button. That way, anytime we put up a new episode, it just goes straight to you guys.
And next week, we're going to talk about we're going to do a live draft.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
gonna walk through that. Actually, I'm going to do the draft, and then John's going to kind of like analyze what I'm doing and tell me how dumb I am. That's going to be cool. But then I also think we're going to kind of talk about what it means to be in a fantasy football league, what it means to run a good fantasy football league, those kinds of things. So excited for that, and we will see you later on the Min, Jay.
Peace.
Peace.